My 30th birthday cake sat on the table, the single candle unlit. When my screen lit up with a notification, it was a photo of my sister beaming at the airport. Off to Paris on our parents' dime. Below it, my mother had pinned a comment that stopped my heart. "She is the one who makes us proud." I did not cry. I simply opened our joint bank account and decided to finally stop being invisible. My name is Leah Martin, and I turned 30 years old inside the quiet, stale air of my apartment in Raleigh, North Carolina. The space was small, a one-bedroom unit that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. But it was mine. On the small wooden dining table sat a miniature vanilla bean cake I had purchased from the supermarket bakery 3 hours earlier. It was the kind of cake meant for 2 people, or perhaps one very sad person. A single wax candle stood in the center, unlit, its wick white and pristine. I sat there, staring at the unlit candle, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. It was 7 in the evening. I had told myself I was not waiting for anything, but my body betrayed me. My muscles were tense, and my eyes kept darting to the phone lying face up on the table next to the cake. I was 30. It was a milestone. It was supposed to matter. For the last 12 hours, the phone had been a paperweight. No calls, no texts, just a promotional email from a clothing store offering me 20% off for my birthday. I told myself it was fine. Everyone was busy. It was a Tuesday. People worked. People forgot. But the silence in the room felt heavy, like physical pressure against my eardrums. Then, the screen lit up. The sudden brightness in the dim room made me blink. It was not a text message, nor was it a missed call. It was an Instagram notification. My heart did a pathetic little jump, a reflex of hope I had not managed to kill yet. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the glass. It was a post from Sienna, my sister. Sienna Martin, 26 years old, the baby of the family, the firecracker, the artist. The photo had been uploaded 4 minutes ago. It was a selfie taken in the international terminal of the airport. Sienna looked radiant, her skin glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights, a designer travel pillow around her neck, her passport held up against her cheek like a trophy. Behind her, out of focus but unmistakable, was the departure board. The caption read, "Surprise trip of a lifetime. Paris. Here I come. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for believing in my dreams." I felt a cold drop in my stomach, distinct and sharp. Paris. Sienna had been talking about wanting to see the Louvre since she dropped out of her second college program 6 months ago. Now, she was going. I scrolled down. The first comment was from my mother. Elaine. It was pinned to the top, a gold star for everyone to see. "She is the one who makes us proud." I read the sentence once, then I read it again. She is the one, not one of the ones, not our daughter. The specific phrasing dug into me like a hook. She is the one. It was an exclusion by definition. If she was the one who made them proud, then I was the one who did not. I sat the phone down, but the words stayed burned behind my eyelids. I looked at my little vanilla cake. I thought about the text I had sent my mother a week ago, reminding her of my birthday, asking if they wanted to come over for a simple dinner. She had left me on read. A memory washed over me, unbidden and familiar. It was the dynamic of the Martin house. Sienna was the fragile genius, the one who needed encouragement, financial padding, and endless applause for participation. I was Leah. Leah was the rock. Leah was stable. Leah was the one who didn't need anything because Leah never complained. I was the furniture of the family, functional, necessary, and completely invisible until I broke. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know if they even remembered what day it was, or if the excitement of sending Sienna to Europe had erased me completely. I dialed my mother's number. The ringing sound echoed in the empty apartment. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. "Hello?" Her voice was breathless, loud, surrounded by the chaotic noise of announcements and rolling suitcases. "Mom," I said. My voice sounded rusty. "It's Leah." "Leah, honey, I cannot talk right now," she said. cutting me off before I could even take a second breath. We are getting Sienna settled at the gate, and the security line is a nightmare. It is frantic here. I have to go. They are calling her group for boarding, she snapped, her tone shifting to that frantic, high-pitched stress she only reserved for Sienna's logistics. We will talk later. Bye. The line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the black screen. Boarding. They were there with her. They had driven to the airport, paid for parking, stood in line, and celebrated her departure. Meanwhile, I was 30 years old, sitting alone with a $5 cake. The feeling that washed over me wasn't sadness. It was something sharper, hotter. It felt like being slapped across the face in the middle of a crowded room. Except the room was empty and the slap came from a ghost. She is the one who makes us proud. The sentence replayed in my head, louder this time. Why? Why was she the one? Sienna had never held a job for more than 6 months. Sienna had never paid a bill on time. I had been working since I was 16. I had never asked them for a dime. In fact, I did the opposite. My eyes drifted to my laptop sitting on the coffee table. For 5 years, since my father, Mark, had a health scare and panicked about their retirement savings, I had been contributing to a family emergency fund. It was a joint account. Dad had said it was for the future, for medical bills, for the house. He had looked me in the eye and said I was the responsible one, the only one he could trust to help build their safety net. I deposited $500 every single month, automatic transfer. I treated it like rent. I treated it like a holy obligation. I reached for the laptop. The metal was cold against my palms. I opened the lid, and the screen woke up, casting a pale blue light over the unlit birthday cake. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I navigated to the bank's website. I typed in my username, then the password. I hesitated. My finger trembled slightly over the enter key. For years, I had never checked the outgoing transactions. I only checked to make sure my deposit cleared. I respected their privacy. I trusted them. I was the good daughter. I was the stable one. But tonight, I was the invisible one. I pressed enter. The dashboard loaded. The balance figure appeared in bold black text at the top right. It was significantly lower than it should have been. My mental math said there should be over $30,000 in there. There was less than $2,000. I stared at the number. The breath left my lungs in a slow, silent hiss. I clicked on transaction history. The list populated. I expected to see medical bills. I expected to see maybe a home repair, a new water heater, perhaps a car fix. Instead, I saw a lifestyle I could not afford, paid for with money I had earned. Delta Airlines, $2,400. Galleries Lafayette, $600. Airbnb Paris, $1,800. I scrolled down. It wasn't just the trip. It was a history of betrayal. Sephora, $300. Ticketmaster, $400. Cash transfer to Sienna Martin, $500. Cash transfer to Sienna Martin, $500. The scroll bar on the right side of the screen was tiny, indicating pages and pages of history. I watched the dates. Every time I made a deposit on the first of the month, the money was drained out within days. I wasn't building a safety net for my aging parents. I was funding my sister's life. I looked at the cake again. The unlit candle looked ridiculous now, a prop for a play that had been canceled. The tears I expected did not come. The burning in my chest cooled down into something solid, heavy, and incredibly cold. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark apartment. "All right," I whispered to the empty room. I leaned forward and clicked to expand the transaction details for the past year. The numbers on the screen blurred, not because my vision was failing, but because looking at them forced me to look backward. A bank statement is not just a list of purchases, it is a diary of priorities. And as I sat there in the blue light of my laptop, I realized that the pattern of my family using me to subsidize Sienna was not new. It was the architectural blueprint of my entire life. It started with the bedrooms, in our childhood home, A modest ranch-style house that always felt slightly too small for 4 people. The allocation of space told you everything you needed to know about the hierarchy. Sienna's room faced the street. It had 2 large windows that caught the morning sun, filling the space with a warm, golden glow that made her collection of porcelain dolls and bright posters look magical. My parents painted it a soft, expensive lavender because Sienna had read in a magazine that it promoted creativity. My room was the converted study at the back of the house. It faced the neighbor's brick wall. It was always 5 degrees colder than the rest of the house, and the carpet was a scratchy industrial gray that had been there since the 1990s. I did not complain. I did not ask for lavender paint. I understood. Even at 7 years old, that space was finite, and resources were limited. Sienna needed the light. I could manage in the dark. This became the unspoken rule of the Martin household. Sienna had needs. I had capabilities. I remember being 16 years old. It was a Tuesday evening, and the kitchen smelled of overcooked pot roast. Sienna, then 12, had decided she wanted to join a competitive dance team. She was twirling around the linoleum in her socks, talking about costumes, travel competitions, and private coaching. The cost was astronomical. I watched my father do the mental math at the dinner table. His brow furrowed. "It is a lot of money. Elaine," he had said quietly. "But look at her." "Mark," my mother had whispered, her eyes shining as she watched Sienna spin. "She has a gift. We cannot stifle that. We will make it work." 2 days later, I brought up a brochure I had been keeping in my backpack for a month. It was for a summer-intensive course on graphic design and digital media at the local community college. It cost $300. It was practical. It was a skill I could use for a career. My mother barely looked up from the permission slip she was signing for the dance team. "Oh, Leah, I do not know," she said, her voice distracted. $300 is a lot for a computer class. Is that really practical? You are already good at drawing. Why do you need a class? "It is for software," I explained. "It is how people get jobs now." "We just paid the deposit for the dance team," my father said. Not unkindly, but with a finality that shut my throat tight. "Maybe next year. You are smart, Leah. You can probably figure it out on your own with library books. You do not need a teacher for that." So I did. I figured it out on my own. I got a job at a grocery store, bagging groceries for $7.25 an hour. I stood on concrete floors until my heels bled. I saved every penny in a shoebox under my bed. I did not buy the course. Instead, I bought a refurbished laptop from a pawn shop, a heavy black brick of a machine that hummed like a lawnmower. I bought outdated textbooks from thrift stores. I taught myself everything in the silence of my cold, gray room while Sienna practiced her routines in the living room with the new sound system my parents had bought her. When I landed my first freelance design gig at 18, designing a menu for a local sandwich shop for $50, I showed my parents. "That is nice, honey," my mother said, handing me a pile of laundry to fold. "See? Dad was right. You did not need that class after all." They did not see my struggle. They only saw that I had survived it, which justified their neglect. My father had a favorite saying whenever I faced a hurdle. He would put a heavy hand on my shoulder, look me in the eye, and say, "Leah, you are the strong one. You are tougher than Sienna. You do not need us to hold your hand." For years, I treated that sentence like a medal of honor. I polished it. I wore it proudly. It took me a decade to realize it was not a compliment. It was an excuse. By labeling me low maintenance, they gave themselves permission to do the bare minimum. I learned to shrink. I learned that having needs was an inconvenience to the family system. If I was hungry, I made a sandwich. If I was sad, I went for a walk. If I needed money, I worked. I became an expert at the preemptive apology. I would apologize for taking up space in the hallway. I would apologize if my car broke down and I needed a ride, eventually just walking 3 miles to avoid the phone call. I stepped back so Sienna could step forward. By the time I was 24, This dynamic was cemented in concrete. I was working at Harbor Crest Assurance as a claims processor. It was not a glamorous job. I spent 8 hours a day in a beige cubicle reviewing insurance claims for minor car accidents and property damage, but it was steady. It offered health insurance. It paid $42,000 a year, which felt like a fortune compared to my grocery store wages. I lived in a cheap studio apartment, drove a 10-year-old sedan, and had a savings account with $3,000 in it. Then came the crisis. I had gone home for Sunday dinner. The atmosphere in the house was brittle. My father was pacing the living room, looking older and grayer than I had ever seen him. My mother was wiping counters that were already clean. "What is wrong?" I asked. My father sighed, collapsing onto the sofa. "It is the house insurance. And the medical bills from your mom's physical therapy. We are behind. Leah, they are threatening to drop coverage on the house if we do not pay the premium arrears. It is a mess. I do not know where the money went." I knew where the money went. It went to Sienna's third attempt at college, which she had dropped out of 2 weeks prior. It went to the new car they co-signed for her because public transit is unsafe. But looking at my father, seeing the genuine fear in his eyes, my programming kicked in. The strong one had to save the day. "How much?" I asked. "It is tight," he said. "We just need a buffer, just until I get the bonus at the end of the year." "I can help," I said. The words tasted like ash, but also like hope. "I have a steady paycheck now. I do not have many expenses." I saw the relief wash over his face. It was instantaneous. The tension vanished. "Are you sure, Leah? We do not want to burden you." "It is fine," I lied. "I want to help." "It is responsible. We should have a family emergency fund." "You are a lifesaver," my mother said, hugging me. It was a tight, warm hug, the kind she usually saved for Sienna when she came home with a participation trophy. That hug sealed my fate. We went to the bank the next day. I added my name to their account to facilitate transfers. I set up an automatic deposit of $500 a month. $500. That was my grocery budget and my entertainment budget combined. To make it work, I cut my own internet and used the free Wi-Fi at the library. I stopped buying coffee. I patched my work shoes with superglue instead of buying new ones. I told myself it was rent for the years they raised me. I told myself it was what good daughters did. But deep down, in the secret place I rarely let myself visit, there was a different motivation. I thought that if I paid for their security, I would finally buy my way into their focus. I thought that if my money saved the house, I would finally be as valuable as the daughter who decorated it. I believed that transaction was real. I believed that my sacrifice was being logged in a ledger of love, accumulating interest, waiting for the day I would need a withdrawal. I looked back at the screen, at the line item for Galeries Lafayette in Paris. I had been wrong. There was no ledger. There was no savings account of affection. I was not an investor in this family. I was merely the fuel they burned to keep Sienna warm. My mind immediately went to the math. It is a hazard of my profession. At Harbor Crest Assurance, we do not deal in feelings. We deal in deductibles and limits. I sat up straighter. The birthday cake forgotten, and I turned my brain into a calculator. $500 a month, 12 months a year, 6 years, $36,000. The number hit me with the force of a physical blow to the chest. My throat went dry, as if I had swallowed a handful of sand. $36,000 of my post-tax income had gone into this account. That was a down payment on a townhouse. That was a master's degree. That was a new car that did not shake when it hit 60 miles per hour. I cracked my knuckles and began to scroll, my eyes scanning the lines of data like I was auditing a fraudulent claim. The deception was clever because it was buried in the mundane. There were legitimate expenses here. I saw the draft for Duke Energy. I saw the payment to the city water department. I saw the quarterly premium for the homeowner's insurance policy that had started this whole charade. These legitimate transactions acted as camouflage. a boring beige background meant to make my eyes glaze over so I would not notice the bright red flags planted in between them. But I was looking now. October 14th, Chevron, $45. That was Dad's truck. Fine. October 15th. The Umstead Hotel and Spa, $450. I paused. My parents had not gone to a spa in October. They had been home complaining about the cost of heating oil. I clicked on the transaction image. The signature on the receipt was a messy scrawl, but the name printed below it was clear. Sienna Martin. I kept going, picking up speed. The transactions came faster now. A rhythmic drumming of financial abuse. November 3rd, Nordstrom Rack, $212. November 12th, Delta Airlines, $380. November 20th, cash withdrawal, $600. Then I found the one that made my blood run cold. It was dated 3 weeks ago. It was a direct transfer from the joint account to an account labeled Sienna Checking. The amount was $1,500. The memo line simply read, "Gift. Cheer up, sweetie." I stared at the date. January 2nd. My memory snapped back to that exact week. My team at work had organized a weekend retreat to the mountains, a cabin trip in Asheville to celebrate the end of a grueling fiscal quarter. The cost per person was $300. I remembered standing in the break room, clutching my lukewarm coffee, looking at my friend Tessa. I remembered the heat rising in my cheeks as I lied to her. "I cannot go," I had said, forcing a smile. "I have some unexpected bills this month. Things are tight." Tessa had looked sympathetic. "Oh, Leah, we can cover you? You can pay us back later." "No," I had insisted, my pride flaring up to protect me. "I really cannot. I am saving for family stuff." I had gone home that weekend and eaten instant ramen for 3 nights in a row. I had turned the heat down to 62 degrees to save on electricity, shivering under 3 blankets while I read a library book. I had canceled my dental cleaning because I was afraid I might need a filling I could not afford. I had sacrificed my dignity, my comfort, and my health to keep this account afloat. And on the exact same day, I was shivering in my apartment eating sodium-packed noodles. My mother had transferred $1,500 to Sienna because she needed cheering up. The realization did not come as a question. It arrived as a verdict. My family was not poor. My father was not bad with money. My mother was not confused about their budget. They were not struggling to keep the lights on. They were simply making a choice. They were choosing to take the money I earned by waking up at 6 in the morning and driving through traffic to a job that drained my soul. And they were giving it to my sister so she could live a life of leisure. I was not a daughter. I was a resource. I was a battery they drained to power Sienna's glow. I scrolled further back, looking for the pattern, needing to see the anatomy of the lie. It was systematic. It was a reward system. June 10th. Sienna posts on Facebook that she finished a 6-week pottery course. June 11th. Transfer. $200. Memo. Congrats on the hard work. August 4th. Sienna gets a job as a receptionist at a yoga studio. August 5th. Transfer. $300. Memo. New work clothes. August 22nd. Sienna quits the job at the yoga studio because the vibes were toxic. August 23rd. Transfer. $400. Memo. Mental health day. It was Pavlovian. Every time Sienna did something, succeeded, failed, cried, breathed, she got a treat. And I was the one paying for the treats. I was the one working overtime to cover the emergency fund so my sister could get paid $400 for quitting a job after 2 weeks. The confusion that had clouded my mind for the last hour began to evaporate. The hurt, that heavy weeping feeling of being unloved, vanished with it. What replaced it was something much more useful. It was a cold, hard clarity. It was the same feeling I got when I denied a claim because the driver was drunk. It was the absence of sympathy in the face of facts. They had stolen from me. They had framed it as duty, wrapped it in guilt, and sold it to me as love. But it was theft, plain and simple. I looked at the total balance again. $1,800 remaining. They had drained almost everything for the Paris trip. If I had waited another week, another month, there would have been nothing left. I closed the browser tab for the joint account. I did not log out. I just closed it, as if closing the door on a room I never intended to enter again. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I opened my personal banking application, the one for the checking account where my paycheck was deposited, the one they did not have access to. I navigated to the savings goals section. I pressed the plus sign to create a new category. The cursor blinked, waiting for a name. Usually, I would name a savings goal something practical, like car repairs or medical deductible. I typed LEAH. I stared at it. No, that was not enough. This wasn't just about me. This was about survival. This was about severing a limb to save the body. I backspaced. I typed 2 words, clear and definitive. Exit plan. I hit save. The new folder appeared, empty, waiting to be filled. I looked at the unlit birthday candle one last time. I did not need to make a wish. Wishes were for children who thought the world was fair. I was an adult now, and I had a plan. The cursor blinked on the transfer screen. I did not hesitate. I did not shake. The clarity I had found was a cold, hard stone in my stomach, weighing me down but keeping me steady. There was $1,842.16 left in the joint account. It was the crumbs of the feast my family had enjoyed at my expense. I typed in $500. I hit transfer. The screen refreshed. Success. I waited 2 minutes. I knew how the bank's fraud algorithms worked. A sudden, total liquidation of an account at 8 in the evening might trigger a freeze. A phone call, a hurdle I did not have the energy to jump over. I had to be methodical. I had to be a surgeon removing a tumor, not a butcher hacking at meat. I typed $490, transfer. I waited again. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of my stale coffee down the sink. I washed the mug. I dried it. I placed it in the cupboard. Every motion was precise. I was buying time between clicks. I went back to the laptop. $450. Transfer. By the time I was down to the last few cents, 20 minutes had passed. I moved every single penny, leaving the balance at exactly $0. I stared at that round, empty number. It looked beautiful. It looked clean. I am not stealing, I said aloud to the empty room. My voice was flat. I am just taking back the change. I closed the tab for the joint account. Then, I went to the scheduled transfers. There it was. Monthly contribution to Family Emergency Fund. $500. Next transfer. February 1st. I clicked cancel. A warning box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer? I clicked yes. The line item vanished. Just like that. 6 years of obligation, erased with a single click of a mouse. It was anticlimactic. It should have been accompanied by fireworks or a thunderclap, but there was only the soft click of the trackpad. I sat back. The adrenaline began to fade, and in its place, the first wave of nausea rolled in. It hit me around midnight. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, which was motionless because I had turned off the AC to save money. A habit I realized with a sudden spike of anger was now obsolete. The guilt crept in like a draft. What if Dad really does get sick? What if the house insurance lapses again? What if I am being petty? They are my parents. They raised me. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could hear my mother's voice in my head, the way she would sound when she found out. Disappointed. Hurt. How could you... Leah? We are a family. Then, I forced the image of the Instagram comment into my mind. I projected it onto the back of my eyelids like a movie screen. She is the one who makes us proud. The guilt evaporated. It did not stand a chance against that sentence. They had defined the terms of our relationship. They had decided that pride was reserved for the one who spent the money, not the one who earned it. If I was not the source of their pride, I refused to be the source of their funds. I got out of bed. I could not sleep. I needed to cement this decision. I needed to turn this money into something they could never touch. I sat back down at my desk. The $1,800 sat in my personal checking account, mingling with my meager savings. It wasn't enough to buy a house or a new car, but it was enough to buy a future. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the website for the American Academy of Professional Coders. I had looked at this page 100 times over the last 2 years. I had memorized the syllabus: Certified Revenue Cycle and Compliance Professional. It was a dry, technical certification. It involved understanding the complex laws of medical billing, auditing, and preventing financial loss in healthcare systems. To most people, it sounded like torture. To me, it sounded like armor. It was a career path that paid double what I made now. It was a job where accuracy was rewarded, where facts mattered more than feelings. I had never signed up because the course and the exam fees were nearly $2,000. I had always told myself, I cannot spend that much on myself. The family might need it. I looked at the price tag: $1,900 for the full package, course, materials, and exam attempt. I typed in my credit card information. I used the money I had just reclaimed. I pressed purchase. The confirmation email arrived 3 seconds later. Welcome, Leah. Your journey begins now. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was lighter than air. I had just spent more money on myself in 5 minutes than I had in the last 5 years combined. And I did not feel selfish. I felt effective. I spent the next hour fortifying my digital life. I opened a completely new bank account at a different credit union, one my parents had never used. I initiated the transfer of my entire personal balance to this new institution. I changed my email passwords. I set up 2-factor authentication for everything. I turned on transaction alerts for every single purchase over $1. Then, I took a physical notebook, a cheap spiral-bound one I used for grocery lists, and I opened it to a fresh page. I wrote rules of engagement at the top. I wrote them down in black ink, pressing hard enough to indent the paper. Rule number 1: no money transfers. Ever. Not for emergencies, not for birthdays, not for guilt. Rule number 2: do not engage in arguments over the phone. If they yell, hang up. Rule number 3: do not accept the blame for their poor planning. I stared at the list. They were simple boundaries, but they felt revolutionary. I was rewriting the constitution of my existence. My phone buzzed against the wood of the desk. I looked at it. The screen showed a photo of Sienna I had taken years ago. She was making a goofy face. The name Sienna flashed on the screen. It was 2 a.m. in North Carolina, which meant it was 8 a.m. in Paris. She was calling to start her day. My thumb hovered over the decline button. The old Leah would have answered on the first ring, terrified that something was wrong. The old Leah would have wanted to hear about the flight. Vicariously living through the golden child, I let it ring. 1, 2, 3, 4. The ringing stopped. The silence returned. Then it started again immediately. She was persistent. I picked up the phone. I did not say hello. I just pressed accept and held it to my ear. Breathing slowly. Leah. Oh my God. You are awake. Sienna's voice was a burst of static and energy. I could hear the sounds of a busy cafe in the background. Clinking cups. Foreign voices. The hiss of an espresso machine. You will not believe this. I am sitting at a cafe near the Seine. The light here? It is unreal. It is exactly like everyone says. That sounds nice. Sienna, I said. My voice was steady, void of any inflection. It is amazing. Mom and Dad are the best. Seriously. I know things have been tight, and I know this trip was a huge sacrifice for the family, but I promise I'm going to make it worth it. I am going to get so much inspiration for my art. I felt a bubble of laughter rise in my throat. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was sharp and hysterical. A huge sacrifice. She thought they had scraped pennies together. She thought they had sold heirlooms. She had no idea the sacrifice was sitting in a cubicle in Raleigh, North Carolina, eating instant oatmeal for dinner. I am sure you will, I said. And thank you. Leah, she added. her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. I know you help them out with bills and stuff, so, thank you for helping make this happen. You are such a good big sister. She was thanking me for the theft. She was thanking the victim for the robbery. You are welcome. Sienna, I said. The words tasted like metal. Enjoy the croissant. I will. I have to go. The tour guide is waving. Love you. Bye. I hung up. I did not say I love you back. I couldn't. The words were stuck behind the wall I had just built. I stood up and walked to the small bathroom attached to my bedroom. I turned on the light. The fluorescent bulb flickered and hummed. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun. I looked like a woman who had just survived a shipwreck, but there was something different in the eyes. The panic was gone. The desperation to please was gone. I placed my hands on the edge of the sink and leaned in, looking directly into my own pupils. From now on, I whispered to the reflection, I am the priority. I went back to my desk, picked up the notebook, and closed it. The day was officially over. My 30th birthday had begun with me being invisible, but it ended with me being the only person in the room who mattered. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, finally ready to sleep. The exit plan was no longer a file on my computer. It was the ground I was standing on. It took 48 hours for the bomb to detonate. I was at work, sitting in my beige cubicle at Harbor Crest Assurance, staring at a spreadsheet of denied claims. My phone began to buzz against the laminate desktop. It was my father, Mark. I let it vibrate for 5 seconds. Watching the name dance across the screen, I knew exactly what this was. He had likely gone to the grocery store or the gas station, swiped the debit card attached to the joint account, and faced the humiliation of a declined message. I picked up the phone and walked to the empty stairwell. It was the only place in the building with an echo, which felt appropriate. I wanted my voice to sound big. Hello? I said. Leah! My father's voice was high, pitched with a panic I had not heard since his heart scare. Thank God you answered. Something terrible has happened. The bank account. It is empty. The joint account. It says 0. There is a transaction error or we have been hacked. Over $30,000. Just gone. I am on hold with the fraud department right now. But the wait time is 40 minutes. He was breathless, terrified. For a split second, the old reflex kicked in, the urge to soothe him, to fix it, to tell him I would handle the scary world. But then I remembered the boutique receipts. I remembered the gift for Sienna. Hang up the phone. Dad, I said. My voice was calm, almost bored. What? No, Leah, you do not understand. The money is gone. Someone stole it. I know, I said. I withdrew it. There was a silence on the other end so profound I could hear the static of the connection. You what? I withdrew the money, I repeated, enunciating every syllable. All of it. The contributions I made for the last 6 years, I took them back. Leah, are you crazy? His panic shifted instantly to anger. That is the family emergency fund. That is for the house. That is for medical bills. You cannot just take $30,000 and walk away. That money belongs to the family. Emergency fund, I repeated. Is that what we are calling it? Because I looked at the statement. Dad, was the emergency a first-class ticket to Paris? Was the emergency a $600 shopping spree at Galeries Lafayette? Or was the emergency Sienna feeling sad on a Tuesday? That is different, he sputtered. We were going to pay that back. That was a loan to your sister. She needed this trip for her career. Her career, I said. She does not have a career. She has hobbies that I pay for. Give me the phone! It was my mother's voice. There was a scuffle, the sound of the phone being snatched. Then Elaine was there, loud and sharp in my ear. Leah Martin, she hissed. I do not know what kind of breakdown you are having, but you will put that money back immediately. This is theft. You are stealing from your parents. I am recovering stolen property, I said. I did the math. Every dollar I took was a dollar I deposited. I left your contributions there. Oh, wait, you did not make any. You just spent mine. You are being incredibly selfish, she shouted. Your sister is finally happy. She is finally finding herself, and you want to ruin it because you are jealous. You have always been like this. Cold. Calculation. You make us ashamed. The words landed. But they didn't sting. They just confirmed the diagnosis. Ashamed, I echoed. I leaned against the concrete wall of the stairwell. Since we are talking about feelings, Mom, answer me one question. Just one. And if you answer it honestly, I might listen. Stop playing games, she snapped. In the last 10 years, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Name one single time you were proud of me. Not grateful that I paid a bill. Not relieved that I fixed a problem. Proud. Tell me one time you looked at me the way you look at Sienna. I waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. The silence stretched out, agonizing and thick. I could hear her breathing. I could hear my father muttering in the background. She was searching her memory, flipping through the files of my life, and she was finding nothing. There were no art shows, no dance recitals, no dramatic trips to Europe. There was just steady, quiet competence, and apparently, competence does not generate pride. It only generates expectation. We gave you life, she finally said. Her voice was smaller now, defensive. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. That is a transaction, I said. Not an answer. I pulled the phone away from my ear. Leah, don't you dare! I pressed the red button. The call ended. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the HVAC system. My hands were not shaking. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. I had just severed the artery, and I did not bleed. I went back to my desk. Tessa, the colleague who sat across from me, looked up. She had been watching me for days, noticing the shift. Everything okay? Tessa asked. You look intense. I am fine, I said. Actually, I am better than fine. Tessa, you know that project manager who keeps asking me to reformat his reports because he is too lazy to learn Excel? Greg? Tessa rolled her eyes. Yeah, he is a nightmare. He sent me another request 5 minutes ago, I said. I just replied and told him no. I told him it is not in my job description and copied his boss. Tessa's jaw dropped. You did what? You always do his reports. You apologize for his mistakes. Not anymore, I said, opening my email. I am done apologizing for things I did not break. That evening, I attended the first class for my certification. The room was sterile, lit by harsh fluorescent strips, filled with adults in business casual attire who looked tired but determined. I took a seat in the front row. Next to me sat a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She had sharp, intelligent eyes and hair dyed a fierce shade of burgundy. She introduced herself as Rosa. During the break, we stood by the vending machine. I found myself telling her a fragmented version of my week. Not the whole drama, but the part about the money and the guilt. It spilled out before I could stop it. I told her I felt like I had abandoned a sinking ship with people still on board. Rosa took a sip of her black coffee and looked at me. Honey, she said, her voice raspy and warm, you did not abandon the ship. You just stopped being the only one bailing out the water while they were drilling holes in the hull. It feels cruel, I admitted. My mother said I was selfish. Rosa started to say it in Vietnamese, then paused, correcting herself. Sorry, my grandmother comes out sometimes. Boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary. If you put a fence around your garden, you are not hating the neighbors. You are just protecting your flowers. If they get mad that they cannot trample your roses anymore, that is their problem, not yours. I looked at her. Protecting the flowers. I thought of my new savings account, the one labeled exit plan. It wasn't a vault of greed. It was a garden I was finally watering. Thank you, Rosa, I said. Don't thank me, she winked. Just pass the exam. This stuff is harder than it looks. When I got home that night, the apartment felt different. It was still small, still quiet, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. I sat on my couch and opened my personal email. There, in the spam folder, was a message from my mother. It had been sent 3 days ago, on my birthday, but the algorithm had flagged it as junk. It was a forwarded e-card. The subject line read, "Happy birthday." I opened it. It was a generic animation of a cat holding a balloon. There was no personal message, no "Love, Mom," just the automated text. And below it, a single line she had typed, "Hope you are having a good day. Don't forget to transfer the money for the insurance soon." She had sent a birthday wish, only to remind me of a bill. I looked at the trash icon. In the past, I would have saved this. I would have replied, "Thank you, Mom." I would have clung to the crumb. I moved the cursor. I clicked delete. Then I went to the trash folder and clicked empty trash forever. The email vanished. I took a deep breath. My chest expanded, ribs stretching wide, the invisible weight I had been carrying, the wet, heavy coat of their expectations, slipped off my shoulders and hit the floor. I was 30 years old. I had $0 in my family account. I had a family that was furious with me, and for the first time in my life, I was completely, wonderfully free. The silence in my apartment, which had initially felt like a vacuum, began to feel like a sanctuary. I filled that silence with study. The certification for revenue cycle and compliance was not easy. It was a dense forest of legal codes, billing regulations, and audit protocols. But I discovered something surprising about myself. The very traits my family had exploited. My obsessive attention to detail, my inability to let a mistake slide, my patience with boring tasks, were actually superpowers in this field. For years, I had used those skills to balance my parents' checkbook and find the cheapest car insurance for my father. Now, I was using them to track revenue leakage in healthcare systems. I was not just studying, I was devouring the material. I was the first one to arrive in the fluorescent-lit classroom and the last one to leave. 3 weeks into the course, my instructor, Dr. Mallory, asked me to stay after class. Dr. Mallory was a formidable woman who wore sharp blazers and suffered no fools. I immediately braced myself for criticism. The old reflex to apologize rose in my throat. "Leah," she said, stacking her papers, "you found a discrepancy in the case study today. The coding error on the cardiology claim. Nobody else caught that. How long have you been doing this?" "I have not," I said, keeping my hands clasped to stop them from fidgeting. I work in claims processing now, but just on the insurance side, low-level stuff." "Doctor," Mallory looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "You have an eye for the bleed," she said. "You see where the money is leaking out. That is a rare instinct. Have you heard of the Pine Bridge Health Collaborative?" I nodded. Everyone in Raleigh knew Pine Bridge. It was a massive, prestigious network of hospitals and clinics. It was the gold standard. "They are looking for a compliance analyst," she said. "It is not an entry-level job. It is mid-senior. But I think you could do it. I am going to send a note to the director there. Fix your resume and send it to me by tomorrow morning." I walked to my car that night feeling lightheaded. A recommendation, based purely on the work I had done in a classroom, not because I was someone's sister or daughter, but because I was competent. The next 48 hours were a blur of transformation. I opened my resume. It was a sad document, filled with passive verbs, assisted with files, helped manage accounts, supported the team. I deleted them all. I replaced them with words that had teeth. Managed, directed, audited, resolved. I practiced interviewing in front of my bathroom mirror. The hardest part was not the technical questions. It was the personal ones. "Tell me about a weakness," I asked my reflection. "I care too much about helping others." The old Leah would have said. "I have a low tolerance for inefficiency," the new Leah practiced saying, "and I am learning to prioritize data over sentiment." In the middle of this preparation, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope with my mother's handwriting. My stomach tightened, but I did not panic. I took it upstairs and opened it with a letter opener. It was a birthday card. It was 3 weeks late. The front of the card featured a watercolor painting of flowers. Inside, the printed text read, "Wishing you a day as special as you are." Underneath, my mother had written, "Sorry this is late. Things have been so chaotic since Sienna left. We miss you. Hope you can come for dinner soon. Love, Mom." A slip of paper fell out of the card and fluttered to the floor. I bent down to pick it up. It was a personal check. I looked at the amount. $50? I stared at it. $50. They had drained $36,000 of my money. They had accused me of theft when I took it back. And now, they were sending me $50 as a birthday gift. As if this small, pathetic rectangle of paper could bridge the canyon between us. It was not an olive branch. It was a bribe. It was their way of saying that everything could be fixed with a token gesture. They truly believed that my dignity cost exactly $50. I did not tear it up. I did not burn it. Instead, I opened my exit plan notebook. I taped the check to a blank page. I dated it. Underneath, I wrote a single note. The price of admission. It was evidence. It was a reminder that they would never understand the magnitude of what they had done because they were incapable of seeing me as a person with value beyond what I could provide for them. 2 days later, I walked into the glass-walled lobby of Pinebridge Health Collaborative. I wore a navy suit I had bought from a thrift store and had tailored to fit perfectly. I felt armored. The interview was with a woman named Janine, a sharp-eyed executive who didn't waste time on small talk. She grilled me on compliance regulations. She asked me about the False Claims Act. She asked me how I would handle a doctor who was consistently upcoding procedures to get higher reimbursements. I would not make it personal, I said, my voice steady. I would present the data. I would show the risk of audit and the potential fines. I would frame compliance not as a rule I am enforcing, but as a protection for his practice. People listen when you show them how much they stand to lose. Janine stopped writing. She looked up at me. "That is a very mature answer," she said. "Most people are afraid of the doctors." "I am not afraid of difficult conversations anymore," I said. And it was the truest thing I had ever spoken. At the end of the hour, Janine closed my folder. "Leah, I am going to be honest. You do not have the traditional background we look for. You do not have a master's degree yet." My heart sank slightly. "But," she continued, "you have the mindset. And Doctor, Mallory's recommendation carries a lot of weight. We need someone who can dig through the mess and find the truth. I want to offer you the position." I blinked. "Really?" "Yes. We can formalize the paperwork later. But I can tell you the starting salary range now. We are looking at $85,000 a year, plus full benefits and tuition reimbursement for your certification." The room seemed to tilt. $85,000. It was more than double what I made at Harborcrest. It was enough to live alone. It was enough to buy a house. It was enough to never, ever need anyone's help again. "That sounds acceptable," I said, miraculously keeping my voice from cracking. I walked out of the building and into the bright sunlight of the parking lot. I got into my 10-year-old car and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I let out a breath that I felt I had been holding since I was 16 years old. I did not call my parents. I did not post it on social media. I drove to a Thai restaurant I had always wanted to try but deemed too expensive. I ordered the duck curry. I ordered spring rolls. I ordered a Thai iced tea. I sat at a small table by the window, watching the people of Raleigh walk by. When the food came, I ate slowly, savoring every bite. It tasted like victory. I paid the bill without checking the total. I tipped 30%. I went home, took a hot shower, and put on clean pajamas. I felt a sense of peace so profound it almost felt like fatigue. I was building a life, brick by brick. I was building a fortress that was mine. I picked up my phone to set my alarm for the next morning. A notification was waiting on the screen. It was an email from my mother. The subject line was in all caps. Emergency. My thumb hovered over the screen. The peace I had felt 10 seconds ago fractured. The word emergency used to send me into a panic, into a scramble to find my wallet, to fix, to save. Now it just made my stomach turn over with a heavy, dull dread. I hesitated. I could delete it. I could ignore it. But the old programming was not completely erased, just overwritten. I tapped the screen to open the message. The email text was short, written in a font size that was aggressively large, as if the volume of the letters could force my wallet open. Leah, your father has lost his job. Effective immediately. They escorted him out of the building this afternoon. We have zero income coming in. The mortgage is due in 10 days. And without his salary, we will default. We are at risk of losing the house. You need to transfer the money back right now. This is not a game anymore. This is our survival. Do not be the reason we end up on the street. My initial reaction was a physical jolt, a sudden spike of adrenaline that made my hands cold. The word homeless has a way of bypassing logic and striking directly at the primal part of the brain. For a full 60 seconds, I sat on my couch, thumb hovering over the reply button, ready to ask how much they needed, ready to fix it. Then, the new part of my brain, the part trained by Dr. Mallory and hardened by the last 3 weeks, stepped in. I took a breath. I read the email again, looking for the discrepancies. Lost his job. My father had worked for a mid-sized logistics firm for 15 years. He was a senior manager. Companies do not just fire 15-year veterans on a Tuesday afternoon without severance, without notice, unless something catastrophic has happened. And even if he had been laid off, there would be unemployment benefits. There would be a grace period. The panic in the email felt manufactured, or at least, the timeline did not add up. If they were truly on the brink of losing the house immediately upon his termination, that meant they had zero savings, which I already knew. But it also meant something else. If there had been a legitimate emergency fund, the one they claimed I had stolen, they would not have spent it on a trip to Paris. You do not buy business class tickets and designer handbags if you are one paycheck away from foreclosure, unless you are delusional, or unless you are hiding something. I did not reply. Instead, I closed the email and opened my contact list. I scrolled past my parents and clicked on Aunt Cora. Cora was my father's older sister. She was the family historian and the family broadcaster. Nothing happened in the Martin clan without Cora knowing the timestamps and the subtext. We had always had a distant but cordial relationship. She was the only one who ever thanked me for the Christmas cards I sent. I called her. It rang 4 times. Leah? Her voice sounded surprised, and hushed. Oh, honey, I did not think you would be calling. I assumed you were involved in the situation. What situation? Aunt Cora? I asked, keeping my voice level. Mom just emailed me saying Dad lost his job. She said it was sudden. There was a long pause on the other line. I could hear the sound of a television playing a game show in the background. Sudden is one word for it, Cora said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Leah, nobody is supposed to talk about it. Your mother made us swear. But the rumor at the Rotary Club, where Bill works, you know Bill, he is in HR at your dad's company, is that it wasn't a layoff? My grip on the phone tightened. What was it? They are saying it was a compliance issue, Cora said, using a term that made my ears perk up. Something about the corporate expense account. Apparently, there was a flag on the credit card statement from last month, a very large deposit for a travel agency, and something about a hotel hold in Europe. I closed my eyes. The puzzle pieces didn't just click together. They slammed into place with the force of a car crash. The trip to Paris. They hadn't just used my money. My money had been the spending cash, the fun money, but the big costs, the flights, the bookings, Dad had put them on the company card. He must have thought he could float it, pay it back before the audit at the end of the quarter. Perhaps using the emergency fund I was diligently filling up every month. He was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, but he had forgotten that Peter was a corporation with a fraud department, and Paul, me, had finally stopped paying. The emergency wasn't that he had lost his job. The emergency was that he had been caught. "Thank you, Cora," I said. "That explains a lot." "Leah, are they going to press charges?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I do not know," I said, "but I know I cannot fix it." I hung up. I sat in the silence of my living room. The guilt that had tried to surface earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy disappointment. They had risked everything: his career, their home, his reputation, just to give Sienna a fairy tale she hadn't earned, and now that the walls were crumbling. They wanted me to be the mortar. I opened the email app again. I did not offer sympathy. I did not ask for details. I wrote 2 sentences. "I cannot help you financially. I suggest you ask Sienna to return the rest of the money she is spending in Paris." I hit send, then I turned off my phone. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. It was a hesitant knock, barely audible. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty except for a figure standing slumped against the doorframe. It was Sienna. I opened the door. My sister looked like a ghost of the girl in the Instagram photo. She was wearing a wrinkled trench coat that looked like she had slept in it. Her hair, usually perfectly blown out, was pulled back in a messy knot. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, devoid of the sparkle that usually defined her. A large suitcase stood next to her, looking scuffed and battered. "Sienna?" I said. She looked up at me. She didn't smile. She didn't launch into a story. She just looked exhausted. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was raspy. "I have nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad, I cannot be there right now." I stepped aside. She dragged the suitcase in and left it in the middle of my small living room. She sat down on the edge of my sofa, keeping her coat on, as if she wasn't planning to stay long. "I thought you were in Paris," I said. Standing by the kitchen counter, I didn't offer her water. I was still in defensive mode. "I came back yesterday," she said. "I took the first flight out after I talked to them." She looked at her hands. Her fingernails were bitten down to the quick. "They called me," Sienna continued. "Mom was screaming. She said Dad lost his job because of the loan they took for me. She said I had to send back whatever cash I had left. She told me to sell the bag. She told me it was your fault." I stiffened. "Of course she did." "She said you stole their savings," Sienna said. She looked up at me then, her eyes searching my face. "She said you drained the account out of spite, so I logged in. You know I have the password to their email? I wanted to see the bank alerts. I wanted to see when the money was taken." She paused, swallowing hard. "I saw the history. Leah, I saw the statements. I saw the transfers from you. $500, every single month, for years." She let out a shaky breath. "I always thought they were rich," she whispered. "I mean, not rich, but comfortable. They always gave me whatever I wanted." "Yes, Sienna, take the class. Yes, Sienna, go on the trip. I thought it was Dad's bonus. I thought it was investments." She shook her head, tears beginning to spill over. "It was you. The whole time. It was you. I was eating your lunch money. I was wearing your overtime." "I stopped it," I said simply. "I took back what was left." "I know," she said. "And you should have. I told them that." "You did?" "Yeah, that is why I'm here." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I went to the house straight from the airport. It was a war zone. Mom was crying, saying we were going to lose the house. Dad was just sitting there, staring at the wall. I asked them why they never told me. I asked them why they let me think we had money when we didn't," Mom said. "We just wanted you to be happy. We wanted you to shine." Sienna let out a bitter laugh. "Shine, that is all they care about, how it looks. And when I asked about you, when I asked why they took your money, Mom said, 'Leah can handle it. Leah is strong.'" The phrase hung in the air between us. The old curse. "I yelled at them," Sienna said quietly. "I told them I didn't want to shine if it meant burning you. I gave them the rest of the euros I had. I threw the Chanel bag on the table and told them to sell it. And then I left. She looked small on my couch. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the golden child. I saw a young woman who had been enabled into incompetence, a victim of a different kind of neglect. They had neglected my needs, but they had neglected her character. I am moving into a hostel downtown until I can find a job, she said. A real job, not a yoga receptionist gig. I needed to see you. I needed to say it. She stood up. She walked over to where I was standing. She didn't hug me. She stopped 3 feet away, respecting the distance I had put between us. Leah, she said, and her voice broke. I am sorry. I am so sorry that I was the one they decided to love instead of you. I felt the air leave my lungs. I had expected excuses. I had expected her to ask for a place to stay. I had expected her to be the brat. I hadn't expected the one truth that neither of us had ever dared to speak aloud. It wasn't love, Sienna, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It was a performance, and we were both just props. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Well, the show is over. She turned to grab her suitcase. I will go. I just wanted you to know that I know. Wait, I said. She stopped. I looked at my sister. She was messy. She was broke. She was terrified. But for the first time, she was real. The hostel is dangerous, I said. The couch pulls out. You can stay for 2 days, but you buy your own food. Sienna looked at me, shocked. Then, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. Deal. The war moved from the private quiet of banking servers to the public noise of the internet on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, reviewing flashcards for my final certification exam, when my phone began to vibrate incessantly against the wood. It was not a call. It was a cascade of notifications. I picked it up. My stomach gave a familiar lurch, but I suppressed it. I opened Facebook. There, at the top of my feed, was a post from Elaine Martin, my mother. It was a long, rambling block of text accompanied by a blurry photograph of me and Sienna as children. Holding hands on a beach, the caption was a masterclass in weaponized vulnerability. A mother's heart is a fragile thing, she wrote. You give your children everything. You sacrifice your own dreams so they can have theirs. You teach them the value of family and support. But sometimes, the world changes them. It is devastating when a child you raise turns their back on you in a time of crisis because they care more about money than their own flesh and blood. We are facing the hardest challenge of our lives, and to be abandoned by someone who has plenty is a wound that will never heal. Please pray for our family as we try to keep our home. I read it twice. The genius of the post was in what it omitted. It did not mention the Paris trip. It did not mention the boutique shopping sprees. It did not mention the $36,000 I had already given. It painted a picture of destitute parents and a wealthy, heartless daughter. The comments were already rolling in from her church friends and distant relatives. So sorry to hear this. Elaine, kids today are so selfish. Sending prayers. Money changes people. How could she? After all you did for her. Sienna was still asleep on my pull-out couch, buried under a pile of blankets. I looked at her, then back at the screen. The old Leah would have deactivated her account. The old Leah would have called her mother, crying, begging her to take it down, promising to send a check just to stop the public shaming. But I was not the old Leah. I was a compliance officer in training. I dealt in audits. I dealt in the paper trail. I did not write along. Emotional defense. I did not attack her character. I simply opened the comment section and typed a response that was as dry as a tax return. I contributed $500 a month to the Family Emergency Fund for 6 years, totaling $36,000. Last month, I discovered that money was not saved for an emergency, but was used to fund Sienna's vacation to Paris and luxury retail purchases. I retrieved the remaining $1,800 to pay for my education. I did not abandon the family. I stopped funding a lifestyle you could not afford. I hit enter. Then, I took screenshots of the post, my comment, and the timestamps. I saved them to a folder on my phone labeled Documentation. The reaction was immediate. The stream of prayers and heart emojis stopped abruptly. For 10 minutes, there was total radio silence. Then, the notifications shifted. A cousin from my father's side, Beth, who usually only posted recipes, replied to my comment. Wait, is this true? The Paris trip was paid for with the emergency fund? Then, a neighbor I hadn't seen in years, Mrs. Gable, commented, I always wondered how you afford those trips. Elaine, Leah was the one driving that beat-up Honda for 5 years. The narrative was cracking. My mother tried to delete my comment, but I reposted the screenshot on my own timeline with a simple caption. For those asking for my side of the story, the ledger does not lie. Sienna woke up around 10. She walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, looking for coffee. She saw me staring at my phone. What is it? She asked. I turned the screen toward her. She read the post. She read the comments. Her face went pale, then flushed a deep, angry red. She used a picture of us holding hands, Sienna whispered. That is sick. It is marketing, I said calmly. She is trying to control the spin. Sienna grabbed her own phone. I am not letting her do this. Not to you. Not anymore. Sienna, you do not have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. She looked fierce, her jaw set. I am the one who went to Paris. I am the evidence. 5 minutes later, my phone pinged again. Sienna had posted a story on Instagram and cross-posted it to Facebook, tagging our parents. It was a video of her, sitting on my couch. No makeup, hair messy. Hi everyone, Sienna said to the camera. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. I am seeing the posts about my sister. Leah, I want to clear something up. The trip to Paris, the clothes, that wasn't Mom and Dad's money. It was Leah's. They took her savings to pay for me, and they lied to both of us about it. Leah is the only reason we had a safety net. I am living on her couch right now because I refuse to take another dime from parents who steal from one child to spoil the other. Please leave Leah alone. The impact was nuclear. My mother's post disappeared within the hour, deleted, but the damage to her credibility was permanent. The victim card had been revoked. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered it on the third ring. This is Leah. Leah. It was my father. His voice sounded hollow, stripped of the bluster he usually carried. He sounded like a man who had been staring at a wall for 3 days. We need to meet. I have nothing to say to you, Dad, I said. And I think Mom said plenty on Facebook this morning. Please, he said. It was a small, broken word. I am not calling for your mother. I am calling because the severance package is not coming. The company is contesting it. They are investigating the expenses. I need to explain things to you, face to face, not over text, not over email. Just talk to me like an adult. I have always been the adult. Dad, I said. You were just the one with the credit card. I know, he said. I know. I looked at Sienna, who was watching me from the kitchen. I made a decision. Okay, I said. I will meet you. But these are the conditions. 1, we meet in public, the coffee shop on 4th Street. 2, Sienna comes with me. 3, if you ask for money, even once, I walk out and I block your number forever. Okay, he said. Thursday, 6 o'clock. I hung up. I felt a strange vibration in my chest, not fear, but the humming engine of a machine that was finally working correctly. I was dictating the terms. Wednesday brought a different kind of notification. I was sitting in the break room at Harborcrest, eating a sandwich, when an email arrived from Pinebridge Health Collaborative. The subject line was, Offer of Employment. My hands trembled as I opened the attachment. It was real. It was official. Position, Revenue Cycle Compliance Analyst. Start date, February 2nd. Salary, $85,000 per year. There was a signing bonus. There was a comprehensive health plan. There was a clear path to promotion. I read the letter 3 times. For the first time in my life, a piece of paper was telling me I was valuable not because of who I was related to, but because of what I could do. They wanted my brain. They wanted my precision. They were willing to pay for my competence. I walked back to my desk. I typed up my resignation letter. It was short, polite, and professional. I sent it to my manager, Greg. 5 minutes later, Greg came rushing over to my cubicle. "Leah, what is this? You are leaving? But who is going to handle the quarterly audit reports? You are the only one who knows how to fix the macros." "I am sure you will figure it out," I said, offering him a small, tight smile. "I have left a manual on the shared drive. But we can talk about a raise," he stammered. "We can maybe get you up to 45,000. "I have accepted another offer." "Greg," I said, "thank you for the opportunity." I packed up my personal items, a succulent plant, a framed photo of my dog who had passed away years ago, and my favorite stapler. I walked out of the building at 5 o'clock feeling like I was floating. The air outside smelled like gasoline and rain. But to me, it smelled like liberation. That evening, as I was packing the last of my books to prepare for the move to a new, nicer apartment closer to Pinebridge, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Aunt Cora. "Leah." The text read, "I heard about the meeting with your father. Be careful. I spoke to your mother earlier. She was not crying anymore. She was quiet. She told me they are planning a reconciliation dinner to apologize to you and Sienna. But she asked me if I knew the limit on your credit score. I think they are up to something. It is a trap. Keep your guard up." I looked at the text. A trap. Of course it was. They were cornered animals. My father had lost his job and his reputation. My mother had lost her social standing. They were desperate, and desperate people do not apologize. They negotiate. I showed the text to Sienna. "They want to apologize?" Sienna scoffed. "Mom has never apologized in her life. She just reframes history until it looks like she was right." "We are going," I said, putting my phone in my pocket. "But we are not going there to make peace. We are going there to sign the treaty." "What treaty?" Sienna asked. "The one where they surrender," I said. "Or the one where we declare independence permanently." I went to my closet and pulled out the blazer I had worn to my interview. I brushed a piece of lint off the lapel. I was done being the victim in their drama. I was the protagonist of my own story now, and the climax was coming on Thursday at 6 o'clock. I selected a restaurant called The Merchant solely for its acoustics. It was an upscale bistro in downtown Raleigh with high-backed booths and heavy velvet curtains that absorbed sound. It was public enough that my parents would not dare to cause a scene, yet private enough that we could speak the truth without the table next to us recording it for TikTok. Sienna and I arrived 10 minutes early. My sister was wearing a blazer she had borrowed from my closet. It was slightly too big for her shoulders, but it made her look serious, like a lawyer preparing for a deposition. She gripped the menu so hard her knuckles were white. "Do not drink the water," Sienna whispered as the waiter filled our glasses. "If I drink, I might throw up." "You do not have to say anything," I reminded her. "I will handle the questioning. You are just here as a witness." "No," Sienna said, shaking her head. "I am done watching." At 6 o'clock exactly, the glass doors opened. My parents walked in. They looked like a masterful performance of victimhood. My mother, usually dressed in bright florals and statement jewelry, was wearing a muted beige cardigan and no lipstick. My father, who typically strode into rooms like he owned the building, looked smaller. His shoulders were slumped, and he held his hat in his hands. If I did not know their financial history, I would have felt sorry for them. They saw us and approached the table. There were no hugs. My mother reached for my hand, but I placed it in my lap. They sat down opposite us. The air at the table instantly became heavy, thick with the things we were not saying. "Leah, Sienna," my father started. His voice was raspy. "Thank you for coming. We know you are upset." "We are not upset, Mark," I said. Using his first name, it made him flinch. We're not upset. We're clear. There is a difference. My mother sighed. A long, tragic sound. Please, can we not be cold? We are a family. We have had a terrible week. Your father has been treated so unfairly by his company. After 15 years of loyalty, they just cut him loose. It is age discrimination, plain and simple. She was already spinning the narrative. She was building the stage where they were the martyrs. We wanted to apologize, my father said, looking at the tablecloth. We made some mistakes with the budgeting. We borrowed from one pot to fill another, thinking we could replace it before anyone noticed. We never meant to hurt you, Leah. We just wanted Sienna to have the opportunities we never had. And now, my mother interjected, leaning forward, we are facing a catastrophe. The bank is calling every day if we do not make a payment of $4,000 by Friday. They initiate foreclosure proceedings. We are asking you, begging you, to help us save the family home. It is the house you grew up in. They had skipped the remorse and went straight to the invoice. It took them less than 2 minutes. I picked up my glass of water and took a slow sip. Before we discuss any numbers, I said, setting the glass down, I have one request. It is the question I asked you on the phone. Mom, you hung up before you answered it. My mother stiffened. Leah, this is not the time for games. It is not a game, I said. It is the condition for my listening. Name one thing you are proud of me for. Specifically, do not say I am responsible. Do not say I am helpful. Tell me a specific moment. An achievement. A trait of mine that brought you joy, not utility. The silence that descended on the table was excruciating. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at my mother for help. My mother blinked rapidly. She looked at me, her eyes searching for a script that did not exist. Well, she stammered, you have always kept your room clean. You were very tidy as a child. I stared at her. I am 30 years old, and you are proud of my hygiene. You are good with money, my father blurted out. You are a saver. We are proud that you are so frugal. You are proud that I am cheap, I corrected him, because my frugality allowed you to be reckless. That is not pride, Dad. That is relief that I was a convenient host for you to prey upon. That is a horrible thing to say, my mother snapped, her mask of sadness slipping to reveal the anger underneath. We did everything for you. We put food on the table, and we did it for your sister, too. Sienna needed that trip. She is an artist. She needs to see the world to be inspired. You are just a claims processor. Leah, you do not need Paris. You are happy in your little apartment. Sienna slammed her hand down on the table. The silverware rattled. Stop it! Sienna's voice was loud enough that the couple at the next table turned to look. Stop using me as your shield. I am sick of it. My mother looked shocked. Sienna, baby, we are doing this for you. No, you are not, Sienna said, her voice shaking but her eyes dry. You are doing it for your own ego. Mom, you wanted to tell your friends that your daughter was in France. You wanted the likes on Facebook. I saw the bank statements. Leah showed me. She showed you? My mother turned her gaze on me. And if looks could burn, I would have been ash. You had no right. That is private financial information. It is my money, I said, keeping my voice deadly calm. I have the right to show anyone where my $36,000 went. I am not an artist. Mom, Sienna continued, the words tumbling out of her. I am a receptionist. I dropped out of college twice. I am mediocre, and that is okay. But you keep pushing me to be this star so you can feel important, and you are making Leah pay for the ticket. I am done. I am not taking another dime from you. And I am definitely not letting you guilt Leah into paying for a house I do not even live in anymore. My mother's face turned a mottled shade of red. She pointed a manicured finger at Sienna. She has poisoned you. Leah has been jealous of you since the day you were born, and now she is turning you against your own parents. Let us look at the timeline, I said, pulling a folded piece of paper from my blazer pocket. I unfolded it and smoothed it out on the table. It was a simple spreadsheet I had printed at the library. Here, I pointed to a row. November 1st, I deposit $500. November 3rd, you spend $480 at a designer sunglass hut. December 1st, I deposit $500. December 2nd, you transfer $500 to a travel agent. I looked up at my father. You did not borrow from a pot. You waited for the deposit to hit like a shark waiting for a seal. It was systematic. My mother looked at the paper. Then she looked at me with a strange, terrifying clarity. She stopped shouting. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. It does not matter, she said coldly. Excuse me? I asked. It does not matter what we spent it on, she said. Her voice was steady now, devoid of the fake emotion she had walked in with. You put that money in the account voluntarily. Leah, you signed the transfer authorization. It was a joint account, legally. Once you put that money in there, it belonged to all of us. You gave it as a gift to the family. My father looked at her, surprised by the pivot. Elaine. Quiet. Mark, she hissed. She looked back at me, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. You cannot steal what was given to you, but you can steal what you take back. You removed $30,000 that was legally ours. You are the thief. Leah. And if you do not transfer it back by tomorrow to save the house, I will tell everyone that you embezzled from your elderly parents. It was a masterstroke of gaslighting. She had taken my generosity and twisted it into a legal loophole. She truly believed that because I had offered my neck, she had the right to bite it. I stood up. Sienna stood up with me. There is a legal term for that, Mom, I said. It is called theft by deception. You solicited funds for a specific purpose, emergency savings, and used them for unauthorized personal enrichment. I have the emails where Dad called it an emergency fund. I have the text messages. And now, I have a witness. I gestured to Sienna. Voluntary does not mean being tricked, I said. And blackmail does not work on someone who has nothing left to lose. The house is your problem. The debt is your problem. And the shame? That is all yours, too. You walk away now, my mother threatened, her voice rising to a shriek. And you are dead to us. I have been dead to you for years, I said. I just finally stopped haunting the house. I placed a $20 bill on the table to cover my water. For the service, I said to the waiter who was hovering nervously nearby. Sienna and I walked out. We did not look back. I could hear my mother's voice rising in the restaurant, a chaotic stream of accusations, but it sounded distant, like a radio playing in another room. We got into my car. The silence inside was heavy, but it wasn't tense. It was the silence of a bomb squad after the wire has been cut. Did that really just happen? Sienna asked, staring out the windshield. It did, I said. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally crashing into my system. She really tried to say you gave it to them so they could spend it on sunglasses, Sienna said, shaking her head. I never knew she was like that. I thought she was just intense. I didn't know she was cruel. Now you know, I said. I started the engine. Let us go get a burger. I am starving. I dropped Sienna off at the apartment and told her I needed to drive for a bit to clear my head. I drove around the city loop. Watching the lights of Raleigh blur past, I felt hollowed out, but clean. I had said the thing. I had faced the monster, and I hadn't blinked. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I assumed it was my mother, sending a wall of text filled with biblical verses and curses. I waited until I hit a red light to glance at it. It wasn't my mother. It was my father. The preview showed a single sentence that made my blood run cold. Can you meet me alone? Just you. I need to tell you the thing your mother does not know. The light turned green. I stared at the phone for a second too long, and the car behind me honked. I drove forward, the text message burning in my mind. The thing she didn't know. What could possibly be worse than what they had already admitted? I pulled over into a gas station parking lot and typed a reply. Where? His response came instantly. The old park by the high school. Now, do not tell Sienna. I met my father the next morning at a small, 24-hour diner near the interstate. It was 5 in the morning. The sun had not yet risen, and the fluorescent lights of the diner hummed with a sound that reminded me of a hospital waiting room. He was sitting in a corner booth, staring into a black coffee that had gone cold. He looked 10 years older than he had the night before. I sat down. I did not order anything. You said there was something Mom does not know, I said. I have to be at work in 2 hours. Talk. My father took a breath, and his hands trembled as he clasped them together on the sticky table. She knows I lost the job, he began, his voice barely audible. She knows it was because of expenses, but she thinks it was a misunderstanding. She thinks I just mixed up the cards by accident. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. It was not an accident. Leah, I booked the hotel for Paris. I booked the luxury tour package. I put the deposit for the chauffeur service on the company credit card. It was over $8,000. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. You embezzled corporate funds? For a vacation? Your mother was pushing, he whispered. She kept saying Sienna needed this to be perfect. She said if we did not go all out, Sienna would fail. We didn't have the cash in the bank because we had already spent your monthly transfers on the car payments and the country club dues. I thought I could put it on the company card. Wait for your next few transfers to come in, and then pay it back before the quarterly audit. You were treating my income like a line of credit, I said. You were gambling with your freedom based on the assumption that I would just keep paying. We thought you would always be there, he admitted. The honesty was brutal. We thought you were the strong one. We thought you could handle the weight. We stopped seeing you as our daughter a long time ago. Leah, you became our insurance policy. And Sienna? I asked. What was she? She was the show, he said. Elaine is addicted to it, the praise, the envy of the other mothers. She needed Sienna to be special so she could feel special, and she needed you to be the engine that kept the lights on so the show could continue. I looked at this man, a man who had raised me, a man who had taught me to ride a bike, and I saw a stranger who had been hollowed out by vanity. I am not going to bail you out, I said. If the company presses charges, that is on you. I know, he said. They are offering me a deal. If I pay back the $8,000 immediately and resign quietly, they won't involve the police. That is why your mother is frantic about the house. We need to sell it to pay the debt. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document I had typed up the night before. It was not a lawyer's draft, but it was clear, concise, and binding in the way that mattered between us. I am not giving you money, I said, but I will give you a path forward. This is a separation agreement. It states that I have no financial liability for your debts. It states that you will never ask me for money again, and in exchange, I will not report the tax fraud you likely committed by not declaring my gifts as income over the years. I slid the paper across the table. Sign it, I said, and then apologize. And do not say but, do not say we tried, just say it. My father read the paper. He picked up a pen. His hand shook, but he signed his name. Then he looked at me. I am sorry. Leah, he said. I am sorry I let your mother erase you. I am sorry I stole your childhood to pay for your sister's adulthood. I failed you. It was the first time in 30 years he had spoken to me without an agenda. I took the paper back and folded it. Thank you, I said. Goodbye, Dad. I walked out into the cool morning air. I did not feel triumphant. I felt light. The fallout was slow and painful, like a controlled demolition. My mother tried to keep fighting. She went on a smear campaign, calling every relative who would listen, painting me as the ungrateful child who abandoned them in their darkest hour. But the truth has a way of leaking out. Aunt Cora had seen the receipts. Sienna had posted her video. The neighbors had seen the foreclosure sign go up in the yard. One by one, the flying monkeys retreated. The ants who used to comment, Blessed on my mother's posts stopped engaging. The church friends stopped inviting her to brunch, without the audience. My mother's performance lost its power. They sold the house. It went for less than they wanted because they were desperate for a quick close to pay back my father's company. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, a place with beige carpets and no room for vanity. For the first time in their lives, they were forced to live within the budget of a single Social Security check and whatever odd jobs my father could find. There were no more trips to Paris. There were no more designer bags. 6 months later, at Pinebridge Health Collaborative, I was sitting in a meeting with the CFO. "Leah," he said, tapping a report I had generated. "This catch you made on the infusion therapy billing, you saved the hospital network $200,000 in potential fines." "It was just a pattern in the data," I said. "It was brilliant," he corrected. "We are promoting you to Senior Compliance Manager, effective the 1st of the month, and there is a performance bonus attached." The bonus was $15,000. I did not put it in a family emergency fund. I took that check, combined it with the savings I had aggressively built up over the last half year, and I drove to a new development on the north side of the city. I put a down payment on a townhouse. It had tall windows, hardwood floors, and a spare room that I was going to turn into a library, not a guest room for ungrateful relatives. Sienna and I built something new. Too. It was fragile at first. She got a job as a barista at a local cafe and started taking night classes for graphic design. Ironically, the very thing I had wanted to do. We met for dinner every Sunday. We made a pact. We would talk about our lives, our work, our dating disasters. But we would not talk about our parents for more than 5 minutes. We were decentering them from our universe. 1 year after the Paris incident, I turned 31. I hosted a small dinner party in my new townhouse. The air smelled of rosemary chicken and expensive wine. Tessa was there, laughing about a claim at work. Rosa from my certification class was there, wearing a bright purple scarf. Aunt Cora drove 2 hours to be there, and Sienna was sitting next to me, looking tired from her double shift but genuinely happy. "Make a wish," Sienna said as she brought out a cake. It was chocolate, rich and dark, with 31 candles blazing on top. I looked at the flames. I looked at the faces around the table. People who knew me. People who respected me. People who brought wine instead of bills. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. It was an email from Elaine. The subject line was blank. The body of the message was short. "Happy birthday. We are trying to do better. Hope you are well." It was a breadcrumb. A tiny, pathetic attempt to see if the door was still unlocked. I looked at the message. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sadness. I felt nothing. It was like receiving a letter from a stranger. I put the phone face down on the counter. "I do not need to wish for anything," I said to the room. "I have everything I need." I blew out the candles. The smoke curled up toward the ceiling, vanishing into the air. Just like the ghosts of my past, I was 31, I was solvent, I was respected, and for the first time in my life, I was the one who was proud. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a busy subway in New York, a quiet room in London, or maybe somewhere in sunny California? Please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on Leah's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel Morgan Revenge Stories, hitting that like button, and pressing the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself. Stay strong, and see you in the next story.